Yeshua, Ozi v'zimrat yam, vayehili 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 Yeshua. And as we get ready to welcome Shabbat, we light our Shabbat candles. And we are so lucky to have a wonderful bar mitzvah tomorrow. It's my honor to invite up Arden Rappaport and his mom and dad, Janice and Mark, to light our Shabbat candles this evening.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our day, be among those who kindle light.
Thank you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
We continue our service with the words of Tov Lehodot.
Tov lehodot l'Adonai, u'lezamer l'shemcha elyon. Tov lehodot l'Adonai, u'lezamer l'shemcha elyon. On this, the day of days, my lips shall sing your praise, for I know that you'll always be here surrounding me. Tov lehodot l'Adonai, u'lezamer l'shemcha elyon. Tov lehodot l'Adonai, u'lezamer l'shemcha elyon. My spirit takes release. I close my eyes in peace, and from my soul heard far above springs a song of love. Everybody. Tov lehodot l'Adonai, u'lezamer l'shemcha elyon. Tov lehodot l'Adonai, u'lezamer l'shemcha elyon. I wish to understand the wonders of your hand, for all the blessings that are mine rise from your design. Tov lehodot. Tov lehodot Adonai, u'lezamer l'shemcha elyon. Tov lehodot Zamer L'Shivcha Elyon.
We continue with the words of Lecha Dodi. We'll sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. On the final verse, we invite you to rise, face any door of your own sanctuary as we welcome the Sabbath bride. In the chat box, we will also be putting in the service for tonight.
B'nei Shabbat nekabela lecha dodi likrat kala. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shalmor v'zachor v'dibor echad Emanu-El hamiyuchad Adonai echad U'shemo echad L'shemo tiferet
Ve'letila Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela.
Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki mekor ha'bracha meirosh v'kedem nesocha sof ma'aseh b'machshava techila
Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Oreri, Kiva orek, Umi ori, Shir daberi, Kevod Adonai, alayek nigla, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Please rise.
Oh, we shalom
Ateret bala Gam b'simcha v'tohola Toch emunei Am segula, Boi chala, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shabbat Shalom. We invite you to wish each other Shabbat Shalom. We see that the meshes are in Austin, Texas, celebrating Shabbat with us. If you are celebrating from anywhere, from Westfield, from Cranford, we invite you to wish each other a Shabbat Shalom in our chat box. Please be seated. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we care nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, a day of rest, a day of wonder, a day of peace. We continue with the Hatzi Kaddish, page 144.
Shemei Rabba.
Amen.
Yamadi Rachirute V'Yolich Malchutei.
V'chayechon v'yomechon u'v'chayetecho Beit Yisrael
Bagala, Bagala, Ubizman Kari, V'Yimeru. Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabba Mevorach, Le'olam Olam Me'amaya. Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitbarach, V'yiromam Yitnasei, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Kodesh,
B'richu
Le'olam in Kol B'yachata, V'shirata,
Tushbechata v'nechamata Ta'amiran b'alma. Please rise.
Baruch hu et Adonai, HaMevorach.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chochma poteach sha'arim, u'bivuna mishanei itim, u'machalif et hazmanim, u'misader et hachochamim, u'mishroteam barakir kirtzono, barei yom v'layla, v'leil or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, u'ma'avir yom u'vin layla, Umadil ben yom uben laila. Adonai tsefaot shemo. El chai v'chayam tamid yimloch alenu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, hamariv aravim.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu,
Adonai echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Please be seated. I invite Arden up to lead us in Via Hafta.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'eleh asher Elohim mitzavecha Hayom Alavaveha. Vishinantam Livaneha. Vidivarta Baham. Vishiteha Baveteha. Uvlecteha Badere. Ukshokbeha Ukumeha. Ukshotam Leo Dadadeha. Vayula Totafo Bene Neha. Uktatam. Amazizot Beta Ubishareha. Lemon Tiskeru. Va'asitem et konsotai. Vitem Kirashim Loehem. Ani Adonai Elohem. Asher Otetiatem Me'eret Mitzrayim. Liot Lahem Elohim.
Ani Adonai Elohechem. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Yasher Koach, Arden. Nice job.
Yasher Koach, you're making the rabbinic intern look bad over here. That was too good. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's so great to be here with you tonight. And before we jump into the Micha Mocha, which is our Song of the Sea, I want to share a poem with you because this week is Parshat Noach, and water is a prominent symbol in our Torah. And the Micha Mocha is sung when the sea splits in Exodus, and we are praising God, saying, "Who is like you, O God, who can split the sea and bring us to this miracle?" But there's power in the water that just moves. So I would like to share with you a poem from John O'Donohue in praise of water. Let us bless the grace of water, the imagination of the primeval ocean, where the first forms of life stirred and emerged to dress the vacant earth with warm quilts of color. The well whose liquid root worked through the long night of clay, trusting ahead of itself openings that would yield to its yearning, until at last it arises in the desire of light to discover the pure quiver of itself, following crystal clear and free through delighted emptiness. The river does what words would love, keeping its appearance by insisting on disappearance, its only life surrendered to the event of pilgrimage, carrying on the origin to the end. We continue with Micha Mocha on page 158 or in your prayer sheets.
Be great to hear everybody on this. Ya ba ba bim bim bam, ya ba ba bim bam, ya ba ba bim bim bam, ya ba ba bim bam, ay 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 ay, ya ba ba bim bam, ay 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 ay, ya ba bim bam, Micha Mocha, Bailim Adonai, Micha Mocha, Nehedar HaKodesh, Norah Tehilot, Osef Ele, Norah Tehilot, Osef Ele, Mahalevu Tara Uvaneha, Bokei Hayam, Lifnei Moshe uMiriam, Zeili, Anu ve'Amru, Adonai Yimlo, Le'olam Va'ed, Yabba Bim Bam, Yabba Bim Bim Bam, Yabba Bim Bam, Yabba Bim Bim Bam, Yabba Bim Bam, ay 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 ay, Yabba Bim Bam, ay 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 ay, Yabba Bim Bam.
We continue on page 160 with Hashki Venu.
This one is by Linda Hirschhorn. Hashki Venu leShalom ve'hamidenu lechaim ufosalenu zakat shilomecha Sukkot Shalomecha. Shema Tzedekenu Uvaveinu L'chaim u'Shalom Me'ata v'ad olam Uvos Aleinu Sukkot Shalomecha Sukkot Shalomecha. Give us this night time to lie in peace. May we rise to new life each day. Let there be shelter for the brokenhearted, a shelter of peace for all. Shema Tzedekenu Uvaveinu L'chaim u'Shalom Me'ata v'ad olam Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shalomecha Sukkot Shalomecha. Sukkot Shalomecha.
We just heard those beautiful words of the Hashkibenu to shelter us in peace, especially during this Shabbat. And before we sing the Shamru, I'd just like us to meditate for one moment about what it means to keep Shabbat also as a shelter in your own heart. Noah is in the ark, sheltered from what's going on outside in the flood. And we have Shabbat as a shelter from what happens during the other days of the week. For this Shabbat, we're going to just take a brief moment. And if you wish, you can close your eyes and just think of what that means, that Shabbat is sheltered in your heart and that you also create a shelter for Shabbat by just keeping it.
Shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat Ledorotam berit olam V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat Ledorotam berit olam Beinu vein b'nei Yisrael Oti le'olam Oti le'olam V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat Ledorotam berit olam Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz V'shamru b'nei Yisrael Lasot et ha-Shabbat Ledorotam berit olam U'b'yom hashvi Shabbat v'yinafash Shabbat v'yinafash Shabbat v'yinafash V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat Ledorotam berit olam.
Please rise for Tefillah on page 164.
Adonai, sefatai teftachu fi yadi tehillatcha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, V'Zocher Chatzei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevei Geula Livnei Bebehem, L'Ma'an Shemo V'Ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, V'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mekayeh Hakol, Atah Ram V'Hoshia, Mashiach HaRuach, U'Morid HaGashem, Mekakel Hayim B'Chesed, Mechayeh Hakol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Berofei Holim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayeh Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Lichamocha Bal Gevurot, Umidor Melech, Melech Meli, Umechayeh, Umat Mirat Yeshua, V'neman Atal HaChayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol, Atah Kadosh V'Shma Kadosh, U'Kadoshim B'Chol Yom Hallelujah Selah, Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
You may be seated. We invite you to take this time to pray silently from the meditations of your heart or for some of the prayers that you have in your prayer sheet or siddur. We continue with Oseh Shalom on page 180.
Oseh Shalom Bimroma, Aseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Terech, Ve'Imu, Amen.
We come to the point in our service when we think of those in our community who are in need of healing. Today, we think of Stephen Wasser, Zalman Bendina, Gabby Kraft Buckman, Susan Klein, Summer Curter, Susan Robb, Linda Rubino, Arlene Furman, Neil Silverman, Linda Fleischer, Bernie Weinstein, Larry Maslow, Mason Rockmore, Martin Ostroff, John Hirsch, Pearl Weitzman, Aaron Taylor, Perry Shellman, Susan Schneider, Sharon Nace, Rabbi Rob Nosenchuk, Emily Tucker, Andy Secutris Diorio, Justin Jeffers, Sharon Zidney, Joyce Kagan, Marv Gerstein, Gloria Ostacher, Ina Botvelvel Dryman, Bill Ward, Scott Goldberg, Rena Goslin, Gloria Saltzman, Emil Vogel, Kathy Murphy, Katie Engel, Betsy Miller, Barbara Miller, Mark Goldstein, Aviva Khana, Mary Ann Stahl. If there are any other names that you were thinking of and people who are in need of healing in your lives, we invite you to put their names in the chat, and we also invite you to say their names out loud here.
Harvey Weislitz, Irv Kaplan.
Misha Pera Abudeinu Makor HaBracha Le'imotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Bishabera Imotenu Makor HaBracha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
We continue our service with the sweetness of Shabbat with our Kiddush on page 123. It's my honor to invite up Arnon to lead us, and he'll hold up the Kiddush cup. I invite all of you to rise, and if you are celebrating anything this past week, maybe an anniversary or a birthday, a new job. I know the Rappaports and we have the same anniversary, so which is nice. Arnon, you could take off the top of that. I invite you to add that in the chat box as well, so we can celebrate the sweetness of this week.
Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch Shemo.
Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, b'shabbat kodesh b'ahava uvratzon, hinhilanu zikaron, l'maaseh v're'eshit.
Yom Tehillah, Lemikrai Kodesh, Zecher L'Tzion Mitzrayim. Ivanu v'charta v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim. V'shabbat kodesh be'ahava u'ratzon hinchaltanu.
Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
L'chaim, take a sip. And Arden, we are so impressed with you as our bar mitzvah for tomorrow. Many of you don't know this, but Arden was actually supposed to have his bar mitzvah in a month, in November, but Arden was so ready, and we wanted to make sure that we could have it with his family during this COVID time, that he said, I want to have it early. And you can take another sip if you want. You're thirsty? A little, perfect. So Arden, we are really thrilled that you'll be leading us tomorrow in prayer. You've been ready a month early. And so tomorrow we would be reading about Noah and how he was a righteous man of his generation. You'll be reading about Jacob, but that's okay. We'll learn more about that. But Arden, I would say that you are a righteous man of your generation. The work that you have done to prepare for this day, as well as with your mitzvah project of collecting Legos and all of the other things that you have done, and being the youngest of your family, I know that you are a strong man, and we are so lucky that you will lead our congregation tomorrow. So we wish you a mazel tov. We wish the Rappaports a mazel tov as well, and some other nice things. The Meshises survived babysitting, plus a sleepover with their granddaughter as well. The Rappaports had an anniversary, and so wishes to birthday wishes as well as anniversary wishes to everyone else.
You may
Please be seated.
Arden, I hope you're not driving. A few days ago, while I was looking through the headlines, I was overcome by a deep sense of overwhelming fear. Beyond the headlines of wildfires rapidly consuming states in the West and the headlines of political fire consuming the hearts of our citizens, a brief survey of global news also lacked promise. Coronavirus fatigue leads to insurrection in Liverpool. Filipina actresses threatened for exhibiting their right to free speech. The world's largest tropical wetland has become an inferno. A rising number of species of mammals and flora in South America have become extinct. These were just some of the headlines that I read in my morning. The world, both literally and figuratively, felt like it was on fire. And it felt like we were living in it. In 1963, James Baldwin published his seminal work, The Fire Next Time. The book's two first opening lines are taken from a slave spiritual, Mary, Don't You Weep, its origins dating back to 1915. He begins his book with the following: God gave Noah the rainbow sign, no more water, the fire next time. These lines reference the Parsha we read this week, Parshat Noach, most commonly known as the story of Noah and the flood. In Genesis 9:11-13, God says to Noah, I will maintain my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. God further said, this is the sign that I set for the covenant between me and you and every living creature with you for all ages to come. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall serve as a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth, he said. The Noach narrative is wrought with fantastic imagery that implores us to truly stretch our imaginations, to imagine a flood so big, so forceful, that even the apex of the Himalayas would be subsumed by water. A flood that warranted and justified the near complete erasure of humanity and every living thing on earth, save for Noah because of the tzedek that he had, and the animals who were lucky enough to have been chosen by him. The very first thing we learn about Noah is that he is a Sadiq, one of the righteous. Ele toldot Noach, Noach ish Sadiq, Tamim haya betorotav, et ha Elohim hitla'ech Noach. This is the line of Noah. Noah was a righteous man. He was blameless in his age. Noah walked with God. The characterization of Noah as a Sadiq, a man who is righteous, has long been a topic of controversy and scholarly dispute. In the Talmud, the rabbis of Avodah Zarah state that the association of Noach's name with the word Sadiq, righteous, implies that his actions were perfect. However, in other tractates of the Talmud, other rabbis do not arrive to a clear, united consensus of Noah's character. Noach ish Sadiq. Noach was a righteous man. It appears as an incomplete clause as we read it in our Torah. It immediately is followed by Tamim haya bidorotav, so that the complete sentence becomes Noach was a righteous man, blameless in his age. Rabbi Yochanan of the Babylonian Talmud said in Sanhedrin that a more accurate translation of this verse reads, well, relative to the other people of his generation, Noach was righteous. He was wholehearted, but righteous not according to the generations that came after him. In short, Noach was righteous only for his time. He does not merit the same accolade deserving of a Sadiq whose behavior stands upright through a continuum. In other words, Noach's righteousness was temporal and is not permanent. Arguments of this nature rely on unfolding events that occur after Noach and his sons depart from the ark. They begin to settle on new land. In Genesis 9, we learn that Noach, after having planted a vineyard, has become drunk off his wine, and he returns to his tent, uncovers himself, becomes naked, and deeply ashamed when his sons witness him in this state. He curses the one who dares to mock his own nakedness in the presence of his other sons. I want to take us back a moment to Rabbi Yochanan of the Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, because he described Noach not as blameless, but wholehearted. The rabbis in Breshit Rabbah posit that Noach's drunkenness does not only represent a moment of embarrassment, but represents a moment of spiritual exile, a spiritual exile from his soul. It's a moment during which Noach, instead of being wholehearted, as he was described in Genesis 6:1, experiences a splitting of his heart into two, the separation of the rational from the faithful, the fracture of a wholeness that allows us to approach the world and what comes from it with our best selves is shattered. Noach no longer acts wholeheartedly. The compromise of his heart is the compromise of his integrity. Rashi notes that the importance of Noah's actions lie in the fact that he was able to prevent them. When he became drunk, Noach was no longer surrounded by the deceitful influences of the corrupt around him. The only temptation for his wanton behavior was the temptation that lived purely within himself, within his own heart and soul. Imagine how disappointed God must have felt when witnessing this event unfold. By that point, God had already promised. God gave Noah the rainbow sign, no more water, the fire next time. I think back to the headlines that grace our morning newspapers of the fire that exists in the world right now, and I wonder, are we living in the fire next time? with the knowledge that God will not use water to douse the flames of pain that different realities of the world give air to, how are we to go forth when it feels as though the forces around us chip away at the wholeness of our hearts? How do we respond to the fire of conflict that comes from hurtful rhetoric or disagreement? How do we live in a fire? We remember that regardless of the headlines, this is my answer. How do we live in a fire? Thanks, Mom. Okay. We remember that regardless of the headlines that describe the fires being blazing around us in this world, that the wholeness of our hearts is perhaps the singular, most unique possession that we alone can control. There will always be temptation, both around us, but within us as well. And we will want to respond to the flames of pain with a huge breath of anger that too invigorates us and reminds us that we are alive. But when everything else feels as though it is being lost to the flames, our hearts need not be lost in the smoke too. We can control how we respond, preserve the wholeness of our hearts, and allow our hearts and souls to know that they alone are one of the few possessions that no one may rob us of, if we only guard them with enough strength. And in the fullness of our hearts, maybe then, the full ownership of the words that emerge from them will allow us to remain not only at home with ourselves, but at home with God, rather than in exile, away from the selves that we aspire to be as we live in this new world. Shabbat Shalom.
We conclude our service on top of page 586. I invite you to rise.
Sorry, I can't get the page.
586. ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כחם, וגורל עלינו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. Please be seated. Let us adore the ever-living God and render praise unto you, who spreads out the heavens and established the earth, whose glory is revealed in the heavens above, and whose greatness is manifest throughout the world. You are our God, there is none else.
Bayom hahu, yeh Adonai echad, u'shemo,
We've started a new tradition this year, 5781, that we will remember someone on our yahrzeit list. And so this evening, I am going to invite Bob Capel to share some memories about his father.
Thank you. My father, Alvin S. Coppell, died in 1989. That was 31 years ago. I was 43. He was 75. He was a terrific father to my sister and me, grandfather to our children, and a wonderful husband to my mother. and to all of my cousins, he was their favorite Uncle Al. My dad was a smart, warm, loving, and funny man. We were very close, especially when we became friends as I became an adult. Family was his prime focus. He worked extremely long hours in the retail world. A 60-hour week was not unusual, but he always had time and made time for his family. Not far behind his love of and focus on his family was his true and deep pride in being Jewish and being an American. He was a person of the era that Tom Brokaw called the greatest generation. Dad served as a naval officer in World War II, and he was called on again to serve in the Korean conflict several years later. He once shared a story with us that even though he was the only Jew on his entire ship during World War II, he arranged for non-sectarian services that he led, in which he included prayers from our Jewish liturgy. In 1945, after the war had ended, the rabbi of our temple, Mishkan Tefillah in Boston, asked him to address the congregation at a service. We found his handwritten speech recently when we were cleaning up our basement during the pandemic. I would like to read these hopeful words from 75 years ago, which were the conclusion of his presentation. I have seen the so-called Jewish problem throughout the world, from the hot, dry lands of Iran and Iraq to the many bomb-blasted but still anti-Semitic cities of Europe. Certainly, I do not have an answer to this age-old issue. However, I, for one, am convinced that the solution does not lie in separation from things Jewish, which seems to be prevalent in some places, but rather in associating with our Judaism, building our social and communal life around our Jewish cultural and community life, and around our cultural and spiritual institutions intelligently through a well-formulated, balanced plan for the betterment of all. It should be part of the post-war community's plans to appeal sensibly to the social, cultural, and religious senses of all people. My dad was a beacon of decency, honesty, dedication, and positivity to our family, to the U.S. Navy that he served, to the people with whom he worked, and to the Judaism that he loved.
Thank you, Bob. A beautiful remembrance of your father on the yard site. Our synagogue community thinks of those who have died in the last 30 days. Stephen Freelander, cousin of Jackie Mandel. Barbara Hockman, mother of Stacy Rockstar. Isaac Billman, husband of Kathy, father of Sarah. Anita Rodkin, mother of Steve. David Bregman, husband of Nancy, father of Carol Gross. We remember the yard site, the anniversary of our loved ones' deaths. Freda Beller, Rosalind Berman, Robin Blumenreich, Sylvia Brofman, Julius Bregman, George Brodsky, Lillian Brodsky, Miriam Budnick Miller, Violet Coe, Janet D. Pugh, Harry J. Diamond, Cindy Ehrman, Dudley Feldman, Miriam Finesse, Estelle Force-Smith, Rudy Fox, William Frost, Sally Garfinkel, Alan Gilman, Stephen Goldberg, Sarah Goldman, Marcus H. Greifinger, Donald Halpern, Sandra Halpern, Beatrice Harris, Arthur Hatler, Herman Harlick, Shirley Horner, Harriet Kabat, Alvin S. Coppell, Cindy Krakauer, Dora M. Lockman, Molly Landrew, Evelyn Lastman, Bennett Levy, Minnie Linder, Sylvia Matzlowski, Jerome Meiselman, Max Miller, Rhoda Moskowitz, Ann Noose, Ida Niedowetsky, Ruben Perlman, Jean H. Pittison, Deborah Pollack, Leah Reisner, Claire Rosenberg, Patricia Rosenthal, Max Selbist, William Schaffman, Stephen Schulman, Esther Silverstone, Benison Savlinsky, Maybell Sternal, Toby Tepper, Albert Weinberg, Holly Wetcher, Gloria White, Emil Zunnerstein, and Matilda Zunnerstein. If you are remembering a loved one, I invite you to say their name out loud or in the chat box. If you are mourning, I invite you to rise. As one community, we rise for the words of Mourners Kaddish. I invite those on Zoom to unmute yourself if you are saying the words tonight. Please join with me. Yikadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, Yamad Yivarach Yirutei v'yamlik malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei t'chol Beit Yisrael, Bagala v'zman kari v'yimru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mivarach le'olam amei amaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitar v'yitam v'yitnaseh. Yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei d'kudashah barichu. Le'elam min kol berchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'necha. Damiran v'yama v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Osei shalom b'rmama. Say shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us and all who mourn. Comfort the bereaved as together we say, Amen.
Amen.
I invite you to be seated and to mute. If you are interested in sharing a memory of a loved one for their yard site, please let me know. Please email me, and we can make sure that you can share it with our congregation as well. A couple of quick announcements tomorrow: Simchat Shabbat virtual at 9 o'clock, as well as our Holy Scrollers at 8:30, and our Saturday morning minyan, or 8:15. Sorry, Saturday morning minyan around 9:30, 9:45. You have received all of the upcoming events. One event that you should know about is our kosher wine tasting program. So if you are interested, you have to order your wine before, and so you should order it by October 30th to get it on time for our first tasting, which is Sundays in November. Our closing song this evening, Cantor Ott.
Adon Olam.
Adon Olam.
So this one is from Johannesburg, actually. Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol Yitzir Nivra, V'yit Nasa, V'chef Soko, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra, Adon Olam, Asher Malach, B'terem kol Yitzir Nivra, V'yit Nasa, V'chef Soko, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra, V'yacharei kefot hakol levado yimlo nora vehu haya vehu hove vehu yeh betivara Adon Olam Asher Malach b'terem kol Yitzir Nivra v'yitnasa b'chef Soko Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Vehu echad, ve'yen sheni, laham shelo lehachbira, ve'li reshit, ve'li tachlit, ve'lo ha'oz v'ha'misra, Adon Olam Asher Malach, b'terem kol Yitzir Nivra, v'yitnasa b'chef Soko, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra, Vehu Eli, V'chai Goli, V'tzor Chevli, V'eit Zara, Vehu Nisi, V'umanus Li, V'nachtosi, V'yom Ekra, Adon Olam Asher Malach, B'terem kol Yitzir Nivra, V'yitnasa b'chef Soko, Azai Melech Shemo Nikra, V'yahado Akiruhi, Tishan Viaira, Vimruhi, Deviati, Adonai Liv Elohira, Adonai Lama Hashem Allah, V'tereko Yetzir Nivra, Le'ed Nasa B'chepsako, Azay Melech, Azay Melech, Azay Melech, Azay Melech, Shemo Nikra.
Thank you to our rabbinic intern, Becky J. Thank you all for celebrating Shabbat with us. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. That was magnificent, Bob and Barbara.
Wonderful, Bob.
Thank you very much.
Shabbat Shalom,
Shabbat Shalom.
Pete and Jackie.
Hello.
Hi, cousins.
Hi, Susan.
Hi. Thinking of Holly, Roz. Thinking of Holly.
Thinking of Holly too. Thank you, cousin
Nice to
Jackie.
see you. Hi, Jackie.
Hi, how are you?
We're good. Nobody else is present.
Yeah.
Hi, Jean and Carol.
What a mitzvah boy. He was a good. Mhm.
Beautiful job by the bar mitzvah boy.
Yes,
It was
indeed.
wonderful.
Jeffrey and Cheryl.
He's got a great voice too. And he definitely needed some help going home after that. A lot of drinking from the Kiddush cup. Shabbat Shalom. Good weekend.
Everybody stay safe.
That's right.
Ditto.
And vote. Make sure you vote.
And vote. Don't forget to vote.
The correct way, too.
Is there an
Early and
election
often.
this year? Who knows?
Free voting.
I'm getting him off.
We had enough of this.
Bye bye,
enough of this.
everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.